Like to call the meeting to order. It's Monday, September the 16th at 7 p.m. and you're in the Adelaide Metcalfe Township office. We have a packed house tonight, more than usual, that's for sure. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Okay. Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. You've had a chance to read the minutes from the September 3rd regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that the minutes of the Adelaide Metcalfe Council held on September the 3rd be adopted as printed. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up under delegations and timed events. The purpose of the following Committee of Adjustment and public meeting is to give council, the Committee of Adjustment, and the general public an opportunity to hear all interested parties with respect to the applications being heard this evening. The public is advised that the comments expressed and written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. Excuse me. In respect to the Committee of Adjustment applications, only the applicant or a public body can appeal a Committee of Adjustment decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This must be filed within 20 days from the date of decision. In respect to the public meeting applications, if a person or public body does not speak to the application at the public meeting or make written submissions to the township, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal or be added as a party to an appeal of the decision to the tribunal. If you wish to be notified of the decision in writing, please submit a written request to the clerk. Okay, we have a recommendation that council convene as the Committee of Adjustment at 7:03 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The first application and only one up under the Committee of Adjustment is the application for consent B02-2024. The owners are Joseph and Deborah Joris, and it's in reference to 3023 Napperton Drive. And I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to our planner, Erin Besh. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the first application, Mike, do you mind? Oh, you did it. Perfect. Thank you. We have our screen share option available now. So I've shared the location map just to give everyone some context on the application. So the purpose of application for consent B07-2024 is to sever 2 additional lots from a larger parcel of land that is approximately 5 acres in size, the purpose of which is for creating 2 new residential building lots. So the subject property as a whole is located on the south side of Napperton Drive, which is County Road 39, between School Road and Pike Road. The applicant is proposing to sever the center lot. So on the location map, that would be the yellow lot in the center. To sever 1 lot at the center of the parcel, thereby creating 2 retained lots on either side. On the map, I've indicated lot 1, lot 2, lot 3. So lot 2 being the proposed lot to be severed is approximately 1.7 acres in size and 176 feet of frontage along Napperton. Lot 1 being one of the retained parcels, it would be 2.1 acres, and the retained lot 3 would also be 1.3 acres in size. So the proposed lands to be severed, being lot 2, contain a single detached dwelling, which is privately serviced, and 2 detached garages. The dwelling and largest garage are accessed via an existing driveway onto Napperton Drive, while the second garage is accessed via a separate driveway east of the dwelling, and a portion of the land is in agricultural production. Retained lot 1 is located on the west side of the severed lot and contains a barn and a driveway onto Napperton. The lot is connected to lot 3 via a gravel driveway across lot 2. And lot 3 itself contains a shop and individual access onto Napperton Drive. And this lot also shares a gravel parking area with the dwelling and detached garage. Both Lot 1 and Lot 3 contain a portion of land in agricultural production. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act. The county engineer advised, if approved, the owner would be required to dedicate lands up to 15 meters from the center line of Napperton Drive. And this would be dedicated to the county of Middlesex for the purposes of road widening if the road is not already to that width. Further, any physical roads or driveway connections between the lots that would allow vehicles to travel between parcels must be removed or altered in such a way that they do not permit travel between the parcels. The township's drainage superintendent advised that this property appears to be within the watershed of the Carruthers Drain and the Van Dam Drain, which would require a drainage reapportionment. And Enbridge Gas gave their standard comment that there is service lines in this area, and if any service lines are affected by the proposed severances, the owner would be responsible for relocating those lines. And finally, the county safety and standards officer advised of his typical conditions that the existing house retain the Napperton 3023 Napperton Drive, and then that the two retained parcels would be provided with individual 911 addresses. So I'm not going to go through my policy and regulatory context section of my report. However, I do want to hit on some key points in my report here. So agriculture, of course, is the predominant land use within the county and an important component of the economy and culture. And therefore, the protection of agricultural land represents a major pillar of the county's official plan, as well as the provincial policy statement. A significant component to this is the general discouragement of land assembly, which results in an undersized agricultural parcel. So from a land use perspective, the policies that seek to limit the creation of smaller farm parcels are an attempt to ensure that viable agricultural parcels are available to support current and future farming practices, which is generally thought that to be supported by larger farm parcels, in part because they are operationally more efficient and maintain greater flexibility for varying types of agricultural use. That being said, the county and township official plans both state that the creation of parcels of land for agriculture of less than 40 hectares shall generally not be permitted. While the county and local official plan provide criteria to evaluate proposals under this size, they relate specifically to the ability of the lot to operate as an independent farm parcel to maintain flexibility for future changes in the type and size of agricultural operations in the area. So although the property is currently undersized at 5 acres, staff are of the opinion that the property is still large enough to accommodate a number of agricultural uses, such as a hobby farm, riding stables, farmer's market, nursery, or small poultry operation, just 4 examples. And further subdivision of the property would restrict the agricultural use of the land and convert the land generally to a residential use only. So as stated in the provincial policy statement, Section 2.3.4.3 strictly prohibits the creation of new residential lots in the prime agricultural area other than for surplus farm dwellings. Additionally, the county official plan limits severances within agricultural areas to surplus dwelling consents, minor boundary adjustments for legal or technical reasons, agricultural related consents for commercial or industrial purposes, and the creation of new farm lots for a minimum of 40 hectares in size. Similarly, the township's official plan has similar permissions for lot creation and further states that the severance of land for the purpose of creating lots for second farm dwellings and retirement lots shall generally not be permitted. The applicant has indicated that the purpose of the severance is to establish dwellings on each of the new lots. They've also stated that the severance will not impact existing agricultural operations and does not remove active farmland from production. County imagery from 2020 does suggest that portions of the land are or have been actively farmed. And as per the designation, they are considered prime agricultural lands, despite how they are used by the owner currently. Planning staff are of the opinion that a severance application cannot be supported at this time, as the creation of residential lots within the prime agricultural area as defined in the PPS is prohibited. So it is for these reasons, Council, that planning staff are unable to support the planning application as proposed. Both the county official plan and Adelaide Metcalfe official plan have strong policy direction in regards to consents in the agricultural area. in order to protect the fundamental economic base of the township and prevent further fragmentation of farmland. The proposal is inconsistent with this policy direction. So therefore, my recommendation this evening is that application for consent B07-2024 be denied for the reasons that the consistency with the provincial policy statement would not be maintained, conformity with the county official plan would not be maintained, as well as conformity with the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe official plan would not be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Are there anybody wants to speak for the applicant or the applicant wish to speak? If so, come up to the microphone here and just push the button there, Joe, please. The bottom, the silver button at the bottom. Yeah, you're good. You're good now. We're pretty high tech here.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My family and I were asking for this severance. So Sarah and Dan, my son and daughter-in-law, can live on the same property as we have for the past 25 years, raised our family. They want to do the same. It's their wish. Our land in the past 25 years hasn't really been used as agricultural. Merely our neighbors, it was offered to them just to keep the weeds down for us. It's so small. I don't know if, I've never figured it out, but I don't even know if there's quite 3/4 of an acre as shown in that crop area. Certainly not a viable living I can make in the agricultural world anyway. Never have been able to entertain it. So we won't be taking any agricultural land out of use. We never have. We're merely asking for a severance for our family to be building on our property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Councillor McKinnon?
Through the chair to Mr. Joris, would it be fair to say that this is for succession planning so that your daughter can live on the farm?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Brody?
Yeah, through Sue, the mayor, to council and people in the, I've sprayed this farm before for the neighbor. And yeah, you're right, it's probably, it won't even be half an acre. And honestly, when you get up and stuff like that with big equipment, it's a pain in the ass anymore, to be honest with you. So I disagree with one part in here saying that can be a viable farm. I mean, both the only thing you could do is you got one big horse pasture in the back or something really, but other than that, I know there's policies in place, but I don't really see a problem with the idea of it. I just don't know if we can do anything at this point or if we have to wait a little bit and see.
Any other comments from the council? Councillor Kingma?
Thank you to the committee. Yeah, I'm very sympathetic with the application. It's just that if we approve it, we'll be contravening some pretty solid policy direction. And I suspect the county would deny it. Maybe the planner or Morgan or any staff member would like to reflect on that comment.
From what I understand, and Aaron, I guess, correct me if I'm missing the point here. But it'll be up to the director of planning to present a report to county council with essentially the decision that was made here today, if approved. and likely recommending that county council does take the appropriate steps to appeal the decision to the OLT, but it would be left up to county council as the approval authority to make that decision or not.
Any other council comments or questions? Councillor Nordoff?
So the one thing we could argue is that really under the provincial policies and the county and township policies, it's not really agricultural land. Yes, it is, but yes, but it's not really used for that. The largest part of it is not. So is that something we could argue?
And also the consideration of housing stock availability is an issue. And we've not finalized our official plan yet either. Anyway, I won't babble on. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak for or against the application?
Put me down, strongly support,
Okay, so Debbie Walsh, okay.
but sometimes common sense has to override. And I read this report. The creation of agricultural parcels of less than 40 hectares shall generally be discouraged, not absolutely.
Great. Debbie, what's your address on Napperton?
5, I'm right next door.
3045. Okay, thank you. Any other,
Already in the
yeah,
undersized parcel.
okay. Anyone else like to speak for or against the application? Okay. So, I'm kind of got, Councillor McKinnon, go ahead.
I'll move the motion that we accept the application as presented with the usual conditions.
Okay. So maybe I can paraphrase that for you. That council approve application for consent B07-2024 in principle. And further that council directs staff to prepare conditions of consent and present them at a subsequent committee of adjustment meeting. Would that be accurate? So are you prepared to move that? Okay, moved by Councillor McKinnon, a seconder. Second by Councillor Brody, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we have a recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 7:18 PM. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Kingma, second by Councillor McKinnon, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you.
Do send me a copy of the decision when it's done, please.
Certainly
Thank
can,
Okay.
but it will be at a subsequent meeting. Okay, perfect.
Okay, we are now going to go into our public meeting. So we have a recommendation that council convene into public meeting at 7:19 PM. We're clearing out the gallery. Okay. Good night, folks. No. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Nordoff, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is an application for zoning bylaw amendment, temporary use Z-10-24, 2024. Owners Wanda and George Lawrence, and it's in reference to 28325 Center Road. Aaron, do you want to speak to this application a little bit?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay,
Let me share my screen here. So this next application is looking to extend a temporary use zoning bylaw that was previously approved but has expired. So the applicant, the temporary zoning bylaw was originally approved by council on July 18th of 2022 and expired after 2 years, being July 18th of 2024. So as of right now, the construction of the new dwelling has not been completed. So the applicant is requesting an additional period of 1 year. Actually, the applicant requested till the end of the year. However, just to ensure, that they don't need to return if there's some further delays in construction. It's just sort of prudent maybe that we give them an additional 1 year extension on the temporary use zoning. And this, of course, is to allow them to continue to occupy the original dwelling while constructing a new one. So the application is for 28325 Center Road. There's no issues from my perspective with the analysis of the application. I have drafted a zoning bylaw for council's consideration this evening. With the original zoning bylaw, the applicant was required to enter into a temporary use agreement and post security, which still stands. I think there's going to be, amendment to the agreement. However, the sort of meat of the agreement would still stand. And then once the applicant has been provided with final occupancy or the 1 year extension expires, the lands will return to the underlying urban residential zone. The application was circulated. I did not receive any concerns. So my recommendation this evening is that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved and given all 3 readings. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Are there any questions or anybody need any clarification? Okay, seeing none, then we have a recommendation that the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z10-2024 be approved and given all 3 readings. The reasons: consistency with the Planning Act would be maintained, consistency with the provincial policy statement would be maintained, conformity with the Township of Adelaide official plan would be maintained in its current state, and the requirement of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe zoning bylaw would be satisfied. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So we now have a recommendation that council adjourn the public meeting at 7:22 PM and reconvene in regular session of council. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Very good. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have a presentation regarding Adelaide Metcalfe Power Opportunity. And we have Peter Budd, our guest, from representing or for Ven4 Inc. So come on up to the table, push the little button in the bottom there, and I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, and thank you, councillors, for having me here tonight. My name is Peter Budd. I live here a lot of the time, not all the time, but I've been here since I was 7, and I'm at Napier Road and Melwood Drive. You probably know the place. Anyway, you've been involved. Thanks. So I'm here today to describe for you what I think is what's about to happen in Ontario in the next few years and an opportunity that this municipality may choose to indulge. And if you don't wish to, I'm not the slightest bit offended. I'm a friend of the municipality and here just to help you understand like what's going on. So tonight, I'd like to speak with you about the power opportunity that I see coming. I'd like to be able to address frankly and candidly what's going on with the system supply in the province and the shortages that I anticipate as a former director of the ISO are possible, notwithstanding all the very good effort of the ISO to bring this together. Our demand is growing very rapidly and more than we think. So maybe we could just kick it off and I can just look at that rather than looking at paper. Thank you. So as I mentioned, the province is indeed becoming short on electricity. We do know from a report issued by the ISO itself in late 2022 that we see demand rising up to possibly 86,000 megawatts. This has never been done in the world before, where a system has been quadrupled or doubled or whatever it is that people think it's going to be. That kind of number has never been done in a 25-year period. So it's extremely ambitious. You could guess the drivers are electric cars, major population growth, and the carbon tax leading a lot of people to move to air heat pumps. And the air conditioning load, just to be reminding everybody in Ontario, is 40% of the cause of the peaks. So our peak demands, when we get to today, it's about 24,000. We once were up at 27,000, but we lost a lot of industry in Ontario. And now we, on a hot day, cannot supply all of our own electricity in Ontario. We're short 2,000 megawatts as we were in August. We only could produce about 21, almost 22,000, but we needed 24, so we import. And all that is understood, but we are in a situation in the province where Manitoba cannot reliably give us power. They're short. They're part of MISO, the Midwest ISO, and they have these issues. And Quebec, as you probably hear, is building lots of wind farms because they have got no more ability to build a whole lot of water power, and they've sold a lot of their water power forward to the US Northeast. So Ontario cannot rely on Quebec to just offset and provide us with their power. So everybody's getting tight. The same situation is going on all over the continent and frankly, parts of the world. And we're in no different situation here, except we got a great place with lots of farms and they use a lot of power. And so we now know that the feds are shutting down the OPG Pickering at the end of 2025. The ISO has asked for an extension of 2,000 of the 3,000 megawatts to after air conditioning season of 2026. That federal permit has not been granted yet, notwithstanding the request. So that's 3,000 megawatts in any event that by the end of September, about now, in 2026, in 2 years, it's off forever. And I say forever because it won't be recommissioned the same way. If it's done again, the Pickering site, it will be new reactors and real good upgrades when that happens. So I just do believe we're into some difficulties in the summertime. Next slide. So the ISO, of course, has recognized these issues to the extent that it could, and it's going to be contracting for about 2,000 megawatts each year. It has had contracting for batteries already, and it got around 2,000 megawatts of batteries in what was called the expedited process. That was really quick to make up for Pickering coming off, and they are contracted fully. And then they did another ISO procurement called LT1. So as you get used to the jargon, LT means long-term first procurement. So LT1, and now we're into LT2. These are going to be rapid procurements of solar, wind, and energy storage. I think you may have seen recently on the Wednesday, just before Labor Day, a very significant announcement out of the government. And if you haven't seen that, I'm happy to send you the link. But it speaks to 5,000 megawatts of wind is what the government is going to procure before 2035. And I think they're realizing they're going to need that sooner. Indeed, as we go clean and green, we've just discovered in the last few weeks, short months, that we're probably short an additional 5,000 to 7,000 megawatts that we thought in Ontario because we are bringing in artificial intelligence and data centers. And some of these are very significant and are huge power draws, and they're concentrated in places that we just don't have the system set for right now. But these companies want to move into northern climes like Canada because it's cooler here and their costs for operating are less, particularly because it's the wintertime and the heat they generate heats their own places. So these are realities that we're facing. And so I, as a resident of this municipality, watched and heard all the stories about the wind the last go round, and it wasn't very impressive, disappointing in a lot of ways. And, these are my neighbors too. And I've said to some of my friends, if it's going to happen in the province, I can bring the opportunity here. Others could too, probably, but I certainly can. And I can help this municipality really get it right so that this municipality benefits. And I want you to know that I was just recently over at Brook Alvinston and made a similar presentation to those folks as well. And I'm sure they're thinking about it. So this is a perfect opportunity for Adelaide Metcalfe to get back into that if they so choose. And this time, I think Adelaide Metcalfe should ask for some money on the way through. And so I did some of my due diligence. I called one of the companies that I've known and I said to them, all right, there's going to be a community benefits agreement. There must be, or it wouldn't bring the project forward. And what type of level would you be able to commit to doing and still win a bid? Because if you did too high a price, you won't win the bid, and that defeats the purpose. So the answer was about $300,000 every year for the term of the agreement, for a community benefits agreement based on each 100 megawatts. And commercially, that works. So that's the information that I'm getting, and that's of course up to you to test that and do whatever you wish, but it's a rule of thumb for you. At least you know, for every 100 megawatts, that amount of money should be available to you on the table right away. And of course, I'm no MPAC expert, but you'll be getting some tax revenues here as well. So we think that that might, draw some interest. Next. Thanks. Just a little bit about us. I'm one of the founding shareholders of a company called Vin4. Vin in French is the first words of wind, vent, and four means strong. So Vin4 is a strong wind, and we are a small battery and a small wind developer. We were involved with the battery plant at St. Thomas, and we're successful with that. I've been in the business 35, 40 years. I understand a bit about it, and I think you'd be dealing with people you could trust that are knowledgeable with us. Our wind farm designer is a fellow named Jim Salmon, who's been doing this for many, many years, and he would be happy to come here and you meet him. Great guy. And we also have one of the most advanced financial modeling fellows. So all these 3 or 4 of us have put it together, and we're doing fairly well. We sold one project already at Chatham to a major, and it's worked on nicely. We are currently out optioning and leasing select sites. As I mentioned, we call this the Strathroy Alvinston Brook Adelaide Metcalfe project because that's where it really is. And we have a map that it is somewhat commercially confidential, but it does show sort of potential layouts and interested citizens. So we know there's a pretty strong interest here. We've got I think 14 or more signed up in this side and 14 or more on the Brook Alvinston side. That number will probably quite easily go to 20. We need to get this done this autumn. And so that's where we're headed because we've got a November 1 date to pay attention to get a larger company that will actually do the build. We'll pick that company, and then they need to be ready to put up Met Towers and bid next year. And then the winners will be announced in 2026. So I'll go through some of those dates in a minute, but it's a great opportunity here. And it also, of course, we have great connection capacity here. There's the line that runs right through by Churchill and just north of us, excuse me, north of Murphy. That's a big line, and that's probably going to be twinned at some point. In fact, I just say as a general proposition, get ready for a lot of transmission upgrades in Ontario when you're moving from that many megawatts to the number we're headed to. It's going to be a significant transmission build as well. You're seeing some of that already in other areas of the province. But, if Bruce Milton does get another 4,800 megawatts, you can bet there's 1 or 2 more lines going to come. The one down by Bruce to Longwood probably will be doubled. That easement's already been taken in 1985 to happen. And another one along Bruce to Milton down, where I live. So one of the things we will need, if you find favor with this, and this is only meant to be an introduction today, happy to roll up the sleeves and get at it if you wish, as we will need a municipal support resolution to participate in the ISO process. And that is a requirement that the Premier's office is insisting on and has told new Minister Stephen Lecce, will continue, and Cabinet all agree with it, and we're perfectly fine with it. There will be some municipalities that want to do well out of this, and there'll be some that would prefer to decline and pass. That's perfectly fine. But, we just want you to know the opportunity because it might be of interest to you. So just jumping into those dates quickly, the LT procurement for the second one will have us basically this quarter that we're heading into next. Some more announcements and filings. There are every month additional things that are coming out, and I'm sure your staff, Morgan and Michael, hear about them, see them, and attend and understand that's all a moving train. And we will pick a major partner developer in Q4 or Q1 next year. We want to be ready for this. The bid submission to the ISO will happen probably in June next year. We think that's likely it based on what we're hearing. And the ISO, as I mentioned earlier, will select the winning projects in Q1 of 26. And then usually it's about a 3-year build. So you need about 1 year to do the Met mast measurements and confirm your wind resource. some of the companies may need a little bit of time to do the financing, but a lot of them will just balance sheet finance. And then when the project's built, they'll go out and external finance it. And it takes usually a year and a half to build. So that's kind of where that one stands. And that's when the opportunity for your revenue would start in 2029. The contracts historically, you probably are aware, usually been 20 years. But the equipment does last longer than 20 years. These things will last, 25 years. I don't know that they'll get to 30 easily without like major rebuilds. But we know that at about year 8, that's the first big overhaul. Year 14, that's another significant overhaul. But you can usually get another 10 years out of that after that. So year 25 is not bad. My information is the government is considering doing 25 to 30-year contracts instead of the former 20-year contracts because it amortizes the costs over that longer period of time, which means it lowers the costs to ratepayers. So that's important for the government not to have, contracts that are crazy priced like some of the last ones were. Just in terms of you, I've tried to think, you, me, us, whatever, the municipality, looking at 20 sites, I did the math back in the envelope, and that'd be about 165 megawatts if you had 7, 8 megawatt machines. And at that level of 300,000 for every 100 megawatts, it should get us about $500,000 a year extra into the coffers of our municipality on terms that you like. Different than the last time, you will have that opportunity to negotiate that. So over a 25-year term with CPI increases, somewhere in the $15 million range. The number of sites could be enhanced. I just telling you where we're kind of at right now, heading into Q4 and Q1 next year. And of course, the owner must set aside the decommissioning funds, and that's a condition of the license that the province provides when they contract. So it's not going to get dumped on the landowner nor the municipality to clean it up when it's done. Just candidly, once these projects are built, rarely will turbines ever really be taken down unless we come up with fission that replaces nuclear or something like that, which I think, could happen in 20 or 30 years. Never say never to these things, really. But the turbines, have a lot of concrete in the base, as you know, and the rule is they got to take the concrete out when they decommission 1 meter down so the farming can continue on top once it's gone. Salvage value is actually excellent on these things, and people are quite content to deal with that. If that comes to that, landowners, just to help you with what your constituents who are signing are going to get, it's $30,000 a year per turbine starting, and that will end up about $50,000 a year at the end of the contract life, given the CPI increases that are embedded in the contracts with the landowners, all of which would sign voluntarily, of course. And so it's seen to be a pretty good deal for many of the landowners who are interested, and that's about it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to engage with you ever how you see fit if you're interested, and if you're directing me to staff, I'll work with staff diligently to get moving forward on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I have 3 questions right off the hop. What is your relationship to Venfor? Like, are you a shareholder?
Yes.
Or you are a shareholder?
I'm a
Okay.
shareholder and I'm a founder.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And number 2, you said you've got 14 signed up in Brook Alvinston and 14 in Adelaide Metcalfe
Correct.
have committed, and you need a minimum of 20 for this thing to fly?
But it's our preference, yes. You could
Okay.
do it with this size, but that's correct. That's our,
Like to make economy of
target.
scale work? Okay.
Yep.
And my third and last question is regarding the decommission. What happens if, for example, the turbines we have here in the municipality that was started by NextEra and then that company was sold? So does the decommissioning, does that transfer to the new company? Is there provincial regulations around that?
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Okay,
does.
so that would be the responsibility of the new owner at that time?
That's correct. That's right.
Okay.
For them to have a generation license, they take it with all the original terms and conditions. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And that would have been in place for NextEra.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Others, do you have questions? Counselor Nordoff?
These wind turbines that you're proposing, are they the same as what we see in this area now, like the same height and the same footprint on the ground?
The footprint won't be much different. It might be slightly larger, but the road would be the same and the footprint would be substantially similar. The hub heights are higher now. I think you probably are looking at 80-meter hub heights right now. And I think you'd be seeing something like 110 or 120-meter hub heights. But it's the megawatts that really improved over the 20 years, Counselor. You know, these were like 1.8, 2.3. That was kind of the style at the time. They're now 6, 7, 8. In the North Sea, they're 20 megawatts floating turbines. The world has absolutely gone this direction. So they are, and they are therefore taller. Their sweep is wider, and there will be fewer of them.
Councillor McKinnon, go ahead.
In your presentation, you say that the benefits is the community benefits agreement of 300,000 for each 100 megawatt. Is there a chance that that threshold wouldn't be reached and it would be under 100 megawatts?
I can't see that happening here. There's an economy of scale and scope to actually have it to the 20 number. When you go to connect to the grid in particular, and I should have mentioned at the outset, all of the wires in this project will be buried right to the connection point. Okay, so that's our commitment to you. But no, actually the plan would be that all of these things would be essentially looked after in the agreement the way you would want, and we can get you precedents for those agreements. So I hope that helps you.
Thank you. And my next question is the substation along Curly Road. Does that have the capacity to bring these 14 or 20 new turbines on without increasing the size of it?
I think you would see a new connection location.
Okay.
It is a different project, a different wind farm, and its design would essentially be different for its particular megawatts and how it would operate. So the ISO, without getting too complicated on the electrical front, I'm not an electrical engineer, is each system would be designed separately with different kinds of circuit breakers and circuit protections. And I can say that with one of the other projects I'm working on up in Bayfield, that is like a $250 million connection to the 500 kV grid, and it has a very customized design, and each wind farm does as well. You've seen that one, I suppose, on the Nairn Road.
Yes.
Yeah, is that the one you're referring to? Yes, I've toured that, and one of my partners in the storage project, Carl Marcello, the former CEO of Hydro One, took us on a tour of that, and that's where I learned it would likely be a very separate station. Yeah.
Thank you. I was pleased to see that it was a Canadian Crown Corporation and the address was Acton.
Yes, yes, yeah, I did. And I would ask that the CPPIB is actually heavily investing in these assets now because they are, long-term contracts that benefit our pensioners.
That's always good to hear. Go ahead, Councillor Brody.
I know I wasn't a fan of the wind projects before, and one big reason was what the government was paying per, however you say it, per megawatt or whatever. The prices were crazy. You know, when they come out with solar at 80 cents or whatever it was, and hydro was only 18. That's a big reason I didn't like these contracts, period, because it was terrible for the taxpayer, terrible.
It was awful for the ratepayer, yes.
So how are these ones put that more into scale from the old project that happened here 20 years ago when the government was pushing?
Sure.
And to today.
So it's an excellent question, and there are substantial differences, not just in the technology that I referred to earlier in the scale and scope, but the process is different. So in the FIT contracts, those were the feed-in tariff contracts, you'll recall under the previous regime, they were just given a number. And the number was 15 cents if you had municipal support and First Nation support, and you brought it to the table and connected, you got 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which was crazy. 13 cents if you didn't have First Nation or municipal, and if you had neither, but they still needed you in the location, you still got 11 cents. So what's the cost of wind now is really what you probably want to know. In Alberta, for example, it's windier. So the cost is like 3.5 to 4.3 cents a kilowatt hour, incredibly cheap. And in Ontario, we don't have the same strong wind regime, except and but for around the Great Lakes and all west of Highway 400. I'd say that's the windiest parts other than the other end of Lake Ontario. So there's limited places where these can go. They could never even really have gone here at the outset because the wind resource wasn't that great between Huron and Erie. But now that they're higher up, they work better. And so the price then, therefore, we expect in this area to be somewhere around 6.5, maybe 7 cents, down from 11, 13, or 15. So a whole lot less. Compare that to new natural gas plants, which are 8 and 10 cents. Do bear in mind, of course, they are completely dispatchable on demand, whereas wind, you take it when you get it, right? And so there is that difference naturally. But nuclear is multiple times the price of what this wind is. And I think the jury's out on how much Nuke Ontario will actually build. That's being studied right now. But in the meantime, the government has said we can build wind quickly. And as I say, relatively quickly, in 3 years, it can be done. Whereas a nuke plant takes 15 years. Water power, we really don't have much more that's significant that we could build without a lot of environmental issues arising. So it's going to be a wind, solar storage regime, and then hopefully eventually, more nuke, or as I said, the advances in fission are significant. So, yeah, but the prices, Councillor Brody, are like a lot lower now than they were. Yep. They're very competitive, frankly.
I guess some of our office can probably answer the questions that, we had, back with the old contracts, there was issues with roads but they fixed them up and, is that over and above this money that's proposed? So say a road gets wrecked when you guys are putting wind towers in, or we have to invest in a road to make it better for a project, or how are some of those costs? Is that over and above, or is that kind of what we have in here? I'm not totally sure on what our costs were before because I wasn't on council then. Maybe Betty Ann might be able to. Right.
Yeah.
So, there's concerns of that,
So
a little bit, so.
I'll answer the best I can, being a local for this. These costs that would be incurred because these projects will attract costs, need to be borne by the company and not the municipal ratepayer, period. And I say to you, a forecast of those costs, a real roll up the sleeves, budgeting, looking, examining, understanding the design, what roads need to be dealt with, egress, all the rest of it. I would urge the municipality to know what that list looks like and make sure that the costs of all of that, and I'll help you get there, will be on the part of to the account of the wind company, not our residents. That if I thought that was what we were ever going to have happen, I wouldn't come here because I'm aware of that. Same thing with tiling. That was a real nuisance, or people moving around topsoil that wasn't theirs to another location. I've heard the stories. We're just not going to have that repeat here because we've learned from the last go round.
And then in my mind, some of the, when a person signs up to have that put on their farm, they know the risks. And that's something that isn't really even in our control,
That's right.
That person or that landowner or whatever, that's their decision, if that goes through and their tile's wrecked after, they kind of know what they were getting into a little bit. I do believe that this is going to be a lot, there were mistakes made and things have improved. But
right. And so all of those things, because I write the agreements, I've made sure the farmer is very well protected. Matters a lot to me in our community that this is done really well this time. So I've mentioned to staff that, if we're going to be a bit of a green energy community, let's do it really right. Let's make sure our farmers are as happy as possible with this.
Yeah.
Mr. Kingman, go ahead.
Thank you, through the mayor. I would really like to see a wind farm design before I, agree to anything. And I know that's kind of a proprietary type of thing for the time being. How can we deal with that kind of tension?
Well, I think frankly, Councillor, after I have this design largely completed, you'd be welcome to see it. Yes. So I'd know where my connection point was going to be, and you would be involved throughout. So you're an active participant throughout. What is being sought is a general letter of support saying, we are willing to be a host for the wind project. It's not saying you agree to that wind project. You'll have your chances at several places along the way to ensure that you're satisfied with your planners, with your lawyers. You need that assurance. And you'll have some general idea of the location of the turbines, like relatively specific. Let me help you a little further with that. So when our wind map farm designer fellow comes along, he knows what the rules are for setbacks. You have to be 100 feet away from a fence line, from a property line. You have to be, you know, however, 380 feet or whatever the number is going to be now in the new rules, which have not yet actually come out, from a residence or an empty lot where a residence could be built. You need to be that same 100 feet away from a creek or a municipal ditch. You need to have fall down distances, it's called. So all of these things are mapped. And what we did when we did our mapping, which never had quite been done before, that I've ever seen in Ontario, was we got Dr. Salmon to actually go get the pins, which I know you know more about than we do in terms of municipal mapping, and he actually put the map on the thing, and then he went and he layered all the setbacks in. So we were able to go to a farmer and say, in this particular colored area, you could put a turbine, and, you know, where would you want it? And the farmer might say, well, I don't want it there, I do want it here, and I want the road here and there, and that's how we worked with them. So the farmers having some significant say in that. This municipality will have a very significant say because ultimately you have a veto. You can just say, no, we're just won't agree with the municipal support resolution and the project is over. So you ultimately have all of that power, and definitely when I have the map a little further along, you're welcome to see it. Not really prepared to put it on the public record tonight for commercial confidentiality reasons, and in particular, because some of the landowners would prefer just to keep to themselves for the moment. But it will all, of course, be up there and filed eventually. Yes, of course.
Okay, Councillor Kingma, follow-up question?
Thank you. Somewhat related to what you just said, are you required to submit an agricultural impact assessment to the satisfaction of our township?
Yes, yes, the Minister Lecce has been very clear that whether it's solar, which is not going to be allowed on prime agricultural class 1, 2, 3 lands, but wind turbines will be, yes, we would still be doing an agricultural. That's a new requirement that the ISO and the ministry have asked for, and we think it's perfectly fine. Yep.
Lecce mentioned that at the AMO conference, so
He
that
did,
was kind of critical.
Yeah.
It's interesting how things change over time. Was there not a point where we were producing too much power and giving it away? We were actually paying New York State to take the extra power, believe it or not.
Yes, your worship, indeed, that was a problem some years ago. Yes. Yep. Not the problem now generally.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Budd? Okay, seeing none then,
I got one.
oh,
So
go
just
ahead.
go back to the timeline then of what's next for us. We obviously have to have a few discussions about this.
You do. So if you huddle and decide that you're willing to sort of take to the next step and have a discussion, then we need to, you know, roll up our sleeves and get into a community benefits agreement. We need to understand the numbers. We need to answer all of your questions, your planner, your lawyers, whatever you decide you need to do, any other experts you hire. And frankly, once you've reached a point of satisfaction, if that could happen relatively quickly, because LT2 is happening fairly quickly, then we would just get on with that whole process. We would finish our design. We would need to have this ready to be submitted in less than a year, right? In June next year, I think is when this is going to happen, and we'll have a large partner to, you know, with the $1 billion balance sheet that will come through with it. And you will obviously meet them and know who they are. But those kinds of things are all things that we could lay out. If you say yes with staff, I would work with your staff to get a timetable for this. So you'd really know what the next few quarters look like.
Through the mayor, one question I have is, if there's another group that comes forward asking the township for the same type of letter, what
Mhm.
does that look like as part of the process that the government has designed? So are we, because I get into procurement things, obviously right off the top of my head, there's community benefits agreements, so there's going to be revenues resulting of a project.
Right.
In this regard.
So first of all, my advice and suggestion to you would be, you know, take that opportunity seriously, of course. As a public body, that's what, you know, ought to be done, I think. But as a practical matter, I think you'd really want to have some idea of where the turbines are, because there are strict limitations essentially as to how close they can be. There are noise studies that are done with each different manufacturer, whether it's a Siemens, a GE, a Goldwing, or whatever. And all of those layouts take those compliance issues into account. You might find that you just actually, on a practical level, when you put it to your experts, you couldn't accommodate two different suppliers in the same area, and the grid couldn't handle it either. You may have to make that decision on your own, but you could let the government make that decision, the provincial government, the ISO, as well. I'm suggesting that there is no legal or practical, no legal requirement that would oblige you to, go with any one. You might have other competing parties that would come in, and you may in later years somehow. But bear in mind, there were setbacks. So the wind farm off Nauvoo, that has 4 turbines, that was up quite early in those days. In our map, there is a line, a circle drawn all around that area, which sterilized that area. So nobody can put a turbine within 3 kilometers of those other turbines at all. These turbines, because of their height, have to be about a kilometer apart no matter what. Otherwise, you get the wind wake coming from the other ones. So the design is actually a remarkably technical matter. And just to Councillor Brody, I really do recommend, if you signal that you're interested in this further, let's get Dr. Salmon down here to speak to your staff or council, so you understand how the design actually works and all the factors that are taken into account.
So Peter, of a question, of the 14 people that have signed a commitment, is it just an expression of interest, or they've actually signed? I'm just thinking, to Morgan's point, if another company came in and could sweeten the pot, are they likely to go with someone else, or the fact they've already signed, have they signed with you in 100%, or is it just an expression of interest?
They have signed binding contractual arrangements with us, which are options, which we have the right then to exercise if we win the bid, and the leases in their form are attached to the option agreement in the form that they were then obligated to sign when the project is approved. So they are binding, yes.
Thank you.
I got a question, and this might be back to some of those old rules, which I wasn't around this level at that time, but there was always talk of people would sign up their land and then a project wouldn't happen, but that legal signing still had authority and no one else could touch that land. Like, they locked that land up for a long time.
Well, there is. So there's people on, it doesn't matter. There's people in the community that signed an agreement. They get a check every year, even though they don't have a turbine on their property.
Correct.
We actually have people in the community that participated in that. So they're tied up, I would think, right? So the minute you have an exchange of $1, you have a contract, so.
But again, I guess that is the landowner's decision to do that, and that's their own decision, basically, at the end of the day, right?
That's right.
Now, and I
You
guess.
have to, the township has to be a willing host, first of all. Yeah, that's the
Correct.
first, so that's gate number 1, I think,
Yeah.
is the issue at hand, right?
That's
So,
right.
yeah, okay. Any other questions? Benny Ann?
The turbines would be more acceptable to be located because of Adelaide Metcalfe. The Adelaide side has long, narrow farms, and the Metcalfe side, the former Metcalfe side, were made up of Eckford and former Metcalfe, so it's kind of cut up a little more. And would it be able to meet the distances in your mind?
So excellent question. In the mapping that we've done so far, we were able to actually find what we call the MOVE areas. They are the eligible areas in all over the municipality, except and but for the exclusioned areas, which are effectively in Brook anyway. But of course you've got turbines here along the 402, right? And then that caused quite a setback from them, that only in the south end. Not only, but more in the south end. It was more easily able to locate turbines or prospective others. That's why I say I don't think we'll have any difficulty getting to 20 or 25 turbines, but that's spread out like over the entire municipality.
Thank you.
So one thought of come through my head. So basically on our Adelaide side, I think there's enough there as there is, right? Basically. So basically you're looking at more of the Metcalfe side.
Yes.
And so even if we decide that we want to do this or be a participating body, I would have to think that would be it. Like,
Yes, after
right,
that,
like,
that's right.
right?
Yes, that's right. That's why I mentioned legally is one thing, but practically it's another. Yeah.
See, everybody's brains are percolating there. Isn't that good? So just when I think we're done, we have another question. So maybe we'll make this last call for questions. You're good? Yeah, and I mean, if other questions come up, I mean, through Morgan to Peter, those
Yeah.
can be addressed as well. Okay, so I have suggested a recommendation that council receive the Adelaide Metcalfe Power Opportunity presentation as presented. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All in favor, and that's carried. Peter, thanks very much for presenting the opportunity. Always interesting conversations. So
Yeah.
we're always looking for additional revenue streams, but we also have to balance that with what the community wants as well. So anyway, I
Indeed.
appreciate you taking the time to come tonight.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you. And officially you'll have an empty gallery. There you go. Thanks.
Okay, thanks again. All right, next up is our correspondence on the agenda, upcoming conferences, seminars and meetings. The next meeting of council will be on Monday, October the 7th at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers, followed by the next meeting of council on October the 22nd. That too is a Monday night at 7 p.m. Recommended reading, CC number 1, the Middlesex County Council highlights from September the 10th, 2024. CC number 2, Blue Water Recycling Association, announcement that the BRA controller Michelle Courtney has been appointed president. And CC number 3, the Asaba Bayfield Conservation Authority Board of Directors meeting minutes from July 18th, 2024. Under action required, CC number 4, we have a request to support a resolution from Tay Valley Township regarding the jurisdiction of the Ontario Ombudsman. CC number 5, a request to support a resolution again from Tay Valley Township regarding the issue that the province has removed wetlands protection for Eastern Ontario and specifically their geographical area. Okay, so I guess I need a motion for council to receive and file CC 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, we'll be into the staff reports. We have a budget to actual for August 2024, and our treasurer, Johnny Pereira, is away at a meeting. So we'll turn it over to our CAO, Morgan Coward.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through you to council, Johnny really tried to be here this evening to provide this report, but I wanted him to get to his conference safely, so I suggested that I would do his report for him. It is a fairly routine budget to actual report. There are no new issues from the last time council got an update, and happy to answer any questions that you may have that I have the ability to answer, or I'll save the rest for Johnny.
Councillor Kingma?
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor to Morgan, I'm looking at administration expenditures. Can you tell us where we stand with our compensation review? Have we engaged a consultant?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Kingma, and through the mayor to you. We released a request for quotation in June 14th to be exact. It closed at the end of the month. We had 3 good quotations submitted, and I'll put this in a more formal report for council later on as we start to go through the process in a little bit deeper, but we ended up going with the lowest quotation being ML Consulting. We've seen her before. She actually put our previous compensation program together. Beyond that, I'm probably going to be in a position to bring forward some compensation related information for council in the second meeting in October. Oh, and we're under budget. Under budget.
First.
Okay, any other questions for Morgan? Okay, seeing none, then we have a recommendation that the operating budget to actual report for August 2024 be received for information. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Nordoff, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, our legislative clerk, Michael Barnier, will present the procurement bylaw. Procedure, we already have a procurement.
Through the mayor to members of council, we have discussed this before, but we did do a little bit of a deep dive into our procedural bylaw. Our previous procedural bylaw was working just fine. We haven't encountered very many issues with it. But there was a few things that were talked about adding, such as a consent agenda, modernizing it a bit, taking out some of the language that refer to specific positions like the CAO, treasurer, those type of things. So, and a big push to simplify the bylaw. It was 56 pages. We're down to 39. It's still wordy. But so we worked a review of different municipalities that have recently implemented them. They're very similar between municipalities, just standard practices developing and developing around things like electronic meetings. I think it's discussed in there about, we did have a whole appendix discussing electronic meetings. That was a result of the COVID-19, but that has been standardized into the act now. So that whole section is much briefer. I did a review with both Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Kingma, a little working group, and I do appreciate their efforts and proofreading the 39 pages multiple times. So the other highlights, I would say, so as discussed, a consent agenda, so we can put routine matters such as the budget to actual would be a perfect one. They're very standardized reports that we can just pass all of them in one. It just makes for a more efficient meeting. It was a little bit ambiguous in the last procedural bylaw for the dates of publishing agendas. We've basically put in what the practice is now, releasing on Thursdays for the public and council. As motions and voting, we did have quite a few different types of motions that are rarely used in municipalities, and they are confusing to list them all. Those have I think there was 12, and I think we're down to about 6 different motions now. And the other one, which I, at the request of Councillor McKinnon, I think it works great, is a lot of procedural bylaws refer to, if you can't figure it out procedurally, you revert back to Robert's rules. But no one's an expert in Robert's rules. I don't carry the Robert's rules book down here. It would be awkward. So we have seen some municipalities that have moved just to a majority vote of council because it's very issue specific, and you should be able to decide how you proceed with that procedurally with a majority of vote. So I am required under the Municipal Act to provide notice of this bylaw that council is considering it. There's no prescribed nature other than using our notice bylaw. So we just have to put it on the website, social media, and newspaper. I think it's no more than 30 days before and no more than 5 before the meeting. So I'm just asking that council approve the procedural bylaw in principle, and that you're directing staff to provide formal public notice requirements and consider the proposed procedural bylaw at a subsequent meeting of council. So it's a lot of material, so I'm happy to take questions on it.
Any questions? I have a couple of comments. So just like to remind everybody, even if there is a consent agenda, you can still request to pull items out to, so it's not, if you see it, it doesn't mean it's locked away and you can't touch it or discuss it. So you would just at the beginning of the meeting pull out any items from that consent agenda. For anyone watching, we do have flies. We're not talking with our hands here, so we're kind of like just keeping them moving here. And then also, we're a little bit late to the party with respect to the Corporations Act and electronic meetings. That was passed a little while ago, so I think it's important that we move this ahead and get it done, so. Seeing no questions then, we have a recommendation that council approve the proposed procedure bylaw in principle, and that council direct staff to proceed with formal public notice requirements and consider the proposed procurement bylaw at a subsequent meeting of council. Could I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, second by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, is there any other business? Councillor Kingma?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Coulter. He's too quiet again. I just wondered if you could tell the public where we stand at the Mullaferry Drive reconstruction project.
Thank you, Councillor Kingma. Yes, we're about 2 weeks behind in the Mullaferry project. Right now, the goal is to be paving the second week of October. Everything's going really well. The residents seem to be generally happy. And yeah, no, it's we're looking forward to it. It's gonna be a very nice road.
Anything else? Councillor Kingma?
Yeah, too bad Johnny's not here, but I was gonna ask how the feedback has been from our mail out about the construction drain bills. Has there been any people calling into the office wondering about the particulars of that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Kingma, we were discussing that today. It up until 3 o'clock today, we still hadn't received a call. We're expecting them soon, but it was discussed today that there has been very little feedback thus far.
Yeah, and for council's information, the Treasury Department here, if you want to call it that, they've set up a triage so that if there are concerns that they would be addressed in a formal way. So just so you know that. And I just want to throw this out there for people to think about. So next year, 2025, the Kerwood Park's going to be 100 years old. So we got to do something for Kerwood 100. So think about what you would like that to look like to involve the community in that. And maybe we would reach out to the Optimist Club and set forth a advisory committee to pull something together, because it's not something that can happen overnight. So I'd like you all to take some time and think about that, and we'll circle back at some point and decide how we'd like to proceed. Okay? Okay, any other business? Last call. Alrighty, we have a recommendation that bylaw 49 of 2024, the zoning bylaw amendment for 28325 Center Road, bylaw 50 of 2024, the temporary use agreement for Wanda and George Lawrence, and bylaw 51 of 2024, confirming September 16th, 2024, receive first, second, third, and final readings. Could I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a recommendation that we adjourn this meeting at 8:14 p.m. Councillor Brody and Councillor Nordoff. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.